bring in Eva Chipiuk. Eva is a lawyer for the truckers with the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom. So I understand, William just said, Eva, that Brenda Lucki testified for 9 hours today. It is a very difficult thing to say 9 hours worth of nothing. That is a skill. She should be a podcaster. Was there anything that Brenda Lucki said that had substance to it, that had meaning to it, other than just her vague can't remember something that happened just a few months ago? The most important policing civil liberties moment of our era. She can't remember it because, there's a lot of other things going on. Was there anything out of those 9 hours that was meaningful or useful, Eva?
Yeah, there definitely were a few things that are worth noting. So one of them was with Commission Counsel. She was having a discussion about how incredibly important it is to use all the tools in the toolbox, and especially de-escalation. And as I think all know, there was zero discussion with protesters. And she kind of nonchalantly threw that out. Well, yeah, we could have talked to the protesters. And so that was just a very strange conversation she was having with the commissioner lawyers. So she was talking all about the tools, all about, on paper, the things you could do as the RCMP agency. And I suspect there's a protocol and things like that, but it looks like, as we know, none of that was implemented. So that was pretty interesting to see. And
I think we got a video clip of that, Eva. I don't mean to interrupt you, other than I think we've got that as clip number 2. Let's just show people where she sort of obliquely, accidentally admits that, yeah, they did not do everything they could. Like, how about just talk to the truckers? Take a look at clip number 2.
These are your notes and presumably what you said to the IRG and Cabinet on the relevant occasions. That said, I am of the view that we have not yet exhausted all available tools that are already available through the existing legislation. There are instances where charges could be laid under existing authorities for various criminal code offenses occurring right now in the context of the protest. The Ontario Provincial Emergencies Act, just enacted, will also help in providing additional deterrent tools to our existing toolbox. And then the bullet below that, these existing tools are considered in our existing plans and will be used in due course as necessary. Had you had these discussions about your views on existing authorities with any of the officials before the circulation of these notes?
Yeah, I think we would have been exchanging verbally. Like Deputy Commissioner Duhem said, it happened so fast. There was Deputy Minister was working on this. We weren't in the working group. We were just brought in as subject matter experts on various authorities that potential authorities, but we weren't in the drafting of any of this. That wasn't our role. So this would have been provided probably verbally. We would have spoken about it, and then obviously because I was asked in an email, it was provided in writing.
You know what? I feel like the fog, the bureaucratic fog emanating there. Hey, but I see a note from our studio here. We now have the footage of the scrum with Brenda Lucki. And I don't know if were you there, Brenda? Or sorry, were they, Eva, watching the scrum or
I missed it, so
let's
I'd
all
be
watch
happy
it
to
together.
watch it.
I wasn't there either. That's the reason why Celine and William were away from the mic when we started the broadcast. Let's see our team in action. Go ahead, studio, and roll the scrum.
You said that the Emergencies Act was the safest option and that you couldn't have done what you did without it. But you didn't say that it was necessary, though. Is there a reason why you didn't say it was necessary?
It's not up to me to decide if it's necessary or if it meets the threshold. It's about, will it be useful to law enforcement? Is there any gaps or any problems if we were trying to enforce it? That's what the parliamentarians would look at. If it's another agency that's going to do something with a regulation, they should be asking that agency.
But if you look at the EA, if you look at Section 2 of the CSIS Act, it needs to be necessary, it needs to be a threat to national security. So as a commissioner of the RCMP, did you consider that it was necessary?
I thought it was useful. I thought it was needed. Now, obviously, I have the benefit of hindsight. we wouldn't have been able to do the enforcement actions as safe as we did. We wouldn't have been able to keep the people at that protest as safe as they were, and it wouldn't have been concluded in the short time frame it was if it wasn't for the emergency.
But just to confirm that you
en français.
Sans l'acte d'urgence, c'était très difficile de faire le renforcement de qu'est-ce qu'on a fait. Ça donnait un environnement qui était plus sauf pour les Canadiens, pour les protestants. Manière qu'on a fait qui était
Let me hop back
plus
in.
sauf.
I paid close attention, William, to her answer. And she said, you used the word necessary. Let me hop in there for a second. William, you said wasn't necessary. And she said it was needed. It was needed. That's a synonym for necessary. And now her explanations were BS. She was saying it made it safer for the protesters. Really? The riot police charging on them, that was safer? What does that mean, safer? It was safer for the protesters to have martial law? What lack of safety was there that became safer? She's a wicked liar. We know that about her. Mm-hmm. But I would say that by saying it was needed, she went further than any other cop we've heard from so far at the commission. All of them said, sure, it was useful. Yeah, I mean, if you give me a blowtorch, it'd be useful. If you gave me ultimate tyrannical power as a czar, it would be useful too. Was it necessary? No, every cop so far has said it was not necessary. In fact, most of the cops sort of said, why are you even asking that? We cleared the Windsor Bridge before the Emergencies Act. We cleared the Coots blockade before the Emergencies Act. How can you even ask if it was necessary when we resolved those problems even before the Emergencies Act come in? Brenda Lucki has gone further than any other cop that I have seen reported. You guys correct me if I'm wrong because you're watching every day. She knows who her loyalty is. Other cops swore their loyalty to the Crown, swore their loyalty to the Constitution. Brenda Lucki swears her loyalty only to a man, Justin Trudeau. She does literally whatever he says and never contradicts him. And so when asked by William Diaz-Berthiaume of Rebel News, was it necessary under the CSIS Act, she says it was needed. She's a wicked liar who serves one man.
Yeah, well, I think another difference to the other cops is that the other cops, when they said that it was helpful but not necessary, they were under oath. And she was talking to me outside of the commission, so she wasn't under oath anymore. And just by the way, there's a third question that I asked. I think that our clip was cut a little bit weird because we saw the French question, but there's also another question afterwards that I did ask to her at the end. But anyway, yes.
Well, let's go to that one. I didn't mean to interrupt, other than it was in French, and I just wanted to say something quickly about the use of the word needed. Let's go and watch your second question, and then if I can ask our friends if they can find the reporter in purple that William mentioned who asked good questions, well, I would be delighted to see those. But let's see William's second question. Let's take a look.
Yeah, plus sauf. C'est les pouvoirs de la.
But on February 13th, your advice to the government was that
The proper decision.
And just to put a finer point on it, you are aware that
fact you did. So what do you say to the fact that you guys didn't put everything on the table, including going out to the
think it's
street and
have
talking
to.
to the
There were certain people designated under this group. In this case, there was 6.
You weren't aware that you needed a court order to do that?
No, the seizing.
Oh,
I
rewind
knew
just a
that
little bit.
you
Looks
needed
like we
a
got
court order.
William's
Yeah.
question there. Go back 20
There was,
seconds.
6 or 7 leaders, so it made it a bit more problematic. Thank you.
And you said during your testimony that you didn't know if you needed a court order to seize the bank accounts as freeze assets. Is there a reason why you weren't aware that you needed a court order to do that?
No, the seizing, I knew that you needed a court order. I wasn't sure on the freezing because we've never done the freezing of accounts. Obviously, when we seize accounts, that's a different aspect, but the freezing was pretty new to me and I haven't looked at it any further. Thanks, everyone.
thank you.
Could you imagine the head of the RCMP thinking that you could just freeze someone's bank account without a court order, without the Emergencies Act? How do you not know that? Did she think you could just poof, you're frozen like a magic wand? Just incredibly embarrassing to the country that is the Chief Commissioner of the RCMP. I'm sort of stunned by it, but I guess you can never be surprised.
Yeah, well, it really showed. I mean, during her testimony, she was joking about losing her job. She was joking about about welcoming a new replacement soon. But yeah, the purple lady is between those, but I'm not sure that we cut it. But no, it was an interesting testimony, and her responses to my questions were interesting. I think we have Eva. I could probably talk a little bit more as to whether or not it was actually her role or not to know that you're supposed to have a court order in order to freeze assets or freeze bank accounts.
Well, just before we get into that, I'd like to actually just mention it's part also of the questions that we're not going to see that were asked by the lady in purple, but she did get a chance to ask Commissioner Lucki what she thought about her reputation after the way that she displayed herself today.
Oh, wow.
And she, no joke, she was so eloquent, probably one of the most eloquent moments today. She stood there in front of everyone at that scrum and she said that she's not going to be replaced and that she'll retain her position as commissioner. So I think that just shows you how deep Trudeau has his hooks in her. It's perfect. It really is. That's why she was joking. That's why when you brought that up, I was like, it makes sense. Of course she's going to joke on the stand because she knows that her position is solidified because she sat up there and she lied through her teeth. It was ridiculous. It was crazy.
You know, I look in the United States, Janet Reno, one of the worst attorneys general in history, responsible for the massacre at Waco. You would think that you massacre men, women, and children, you just might be replaced as attorney general. No. Because now you would literally do anything for the president if he keeps you on. And so Janet Reno blocked and protected Bill Clinton, no matter what he did, because Janet Reno did something worse. She killed children. That's not an exaggeration. That's not hyperbole. That is what she did. And Eric Holder had the same role for Barack Obama. When you have an absolute obedient, submissive, like I'm talking BDSM, submissive, do literally anything. Of course she's... In fact, the worse she was, the safer she would be. Her very weakness and impotence and ignorance and folly and muffled, masked mouth mumbles is why she is the perfect Trudeau justice. I mean, could you find... perfect Trudeau RCMP Chief Commissioner, can you find a better contrast between Jody Wilson-Raybould, educated, intelligent, active, principled, ethical, versus the masked mumbler, Brenda Lucki? Jody Wilson-Raybould, Brenda Lucki couldn't have two more different people. One was fired by Trudeau because she dared to say, whoa, don't meddle with a criminal trial. The other, Brenda Lucki, saying, Master, what can I do to serve you today? Just unbelievable. Eva, what do you think? Am I wrong? I don't think she's going to be replaced. I think she did exactly what her boss wanted and needed her to do, and that is why she will continue. What do you think?
Well, I have to say ignorance is not a defense for law, and it's really a shame to see the top commissioner for all of Canada being ignorant of the law. If anybody should be educated about the law, it is definitely her. Hearing that response to William's question about freezing bank accounts, not knowing, that's not an excuse. That's not acceptable. It should not be accepted in Canada. She didn't even know the name of the Emergencies Act. She thought, and she says this jokingly, nonchalantly, like it has no consequences. I thought it was the Emergency Measures Act. This is not somebody that should be ignorant of any of these things she's talking about because the consequences are way too severe. And that's what we're going to see in Canada. It's just like every clip we've been watching, it's very hard to watch. I couldn't even watch the rest of the evidence today. It was mumbo jumbo half the time, so it was really hard to watch. So I don't know how and why this is acceptable in Canada.
Unbelievable. Well, I think that as long as people keep re-electing Trudeau and his little buddy Jagmeet Singh, you're going to keep getting this. And I just think that, I wonder if people are just tuned out. They're numb to it. It's all gobbledygook. It's all boring, just lawyers and police droning on. And maybe only people like you and me and Rebel News viewers and the truckers who have their knobs turned up to 10. Maybe we're the only people who care about freedom, and everyone else well, what's the price of gas today, and what's the price of my home today, and I got you're just living day-to-day real-life stuff. I think that the very fact that this is a fog machine is why Trudeau's going to skate. Now, I'm sort of optimistic that the judge is going to say there was no evidence justifying the invocation. Like, I just don't know how any honest judge, faced with the evidence of 23 days, that not a single person of authority, and frankly, even the odd flotsam and jetsam that testified too, even they didn't say, yes, we needed martial law. I don't even think a single person has said that. You're paying closer attention to me. Eva, has a single witness in 23 days said, actually, we needed martial law? Did a single person say that?
So not that I've heard, and I did hear a lot of it was helpful, but that's not even the test to justify invoking the Emergencies Act. And that's one thing I wanted to say. Under cross-examination with Brendan Miller right at the end, she was asked, so who told you, or how did you think that this would have been justified? And she said, well, that's not for the RCMP to decide. That's for CSIS to decide whether or not there's a justified national threat to security of Canada under Section 2 of the Act. And he said, or he asked, so was that the case? And she kind of said, I believe that's what they said, that there was no threat. So she confirmed the RCMP is not the body that would be the one giving the advice or the evidence for a national security threat. She confirmed that it's CSIS's role to do so. And there we have it. Zero justification from the CSIS, zero justification because it's not their job from the RCMP. So whether or not she thought maybe she might need it or it was helpful really doesn't figure into whether or not it was justified.
Yeah. I just think that the judge will have no other alternative but to do the right thing here. I think that I don't care who appointed this judge. I don't care what his political stripe was when he was a lawyer. I think any honest judge who is not crooked would have to say there is no justification under the Emergencies Act for the invocation of martial law. And by the way, I think the Liberal Senate knew that too when they threatened to vote against it and when Justin Trudeau was forced to blink. It wasn't the media that forced him to blink. It wasn't law professors. It wasn't the official opposition. It wasn't civil liberties groups. It wasn't anything. It was Liberal senators who say, you know what, boss? We're not going all the way down with you here. And I think the judge will come to the same conclusion. We still haven't heard from Trudeau himself, but I don't know what he could possibly say as if he's in the details of these things. And I don't know. I think that this is an excellent commission of inquiry in terms of providing the facts of it. I think the judge will do the right thing. What I'm less certain of is that Canadians who have put up with the blackface groper who takes $100,000 free holidays, if they would put up with all that, why wouldn't they put up with some cops knocking some heads around? Like, why would this be more offensive to them? I don't know. Maybe I'm sounding very black pill right now.
Well, I'm hoping that this is the straw that broke the camel's back. At some point, we have to say, this is enough. I've said it many times on social media today, this is an embarrassment to our country, what happened today, the display from the RCMP commissioner. When you juxtapose that to alongside the OPP commissioner and the professionalism displayed by the OPP officers, the superintendent of intelligence, you could really, that's somebody I trust my life with or this country with. What was on display from Commissioner Lucki, I think all Canadians should be outraged, embarrassed, and demanding more.
Hey, Eva, we've got a couple of super chats, if I'm reading this right, and I just want to read a couple of them. Cheryl Dawn V chips in 5 smackers and says, Ezra, please tell us your opinion if this inquiry finds that there was no reason to enact the Emergencies Act. What are the actual ramifications? Will anybody be responsible like our PM? Well, I can tell you that nothing will happen, just like when he was convicted under the Conflict of Interest Act. I think a few journalists will tut-tut, like the Globe and Mail will say, oh, well, a lesson learned. And Trudeau will say, well, this was a learning moment for all of us, and we all have to do better. And by that, I mean you. And I think that some of the media, the regime media, like Global News and the CBC, will, blame storm a little bit put the blame on the truckers. And nothing will change. Now, do you think Jagmeet Singh is going to pull away his support from Justin Trudeau? No chance. Orizia gave a Restream paid chat and said, I can't help thinking it's a great opportunity of out with the old ways and time for a new vision of Canada, landmass. Well, out with the old, in with the new, depends what the new vision is. I think that there are some eternal values. You don't have to always come up with a novelty. Freedom, limited government, personal responsibility, judging people on the content of their character, not the color of their skin. Those are my traditional values, and I wonder, Orizia, if that's the same with you. Hey, Eva, thanks for standing by there. I want to check with our studio team if there are more interesting clips from that scrum. William said that he thought the lady in purple, we got to have a Kijiji ad. You were the lady in purple at the scrum on Tuesday night. I was William Diaz-Berthiaume, an 18-year-old reporter for Rebel News. You asked great questions. I was amazed. You took the words right out of my mouth. We must meet again. I see like a personal ad or something. Who is this mystery woman in purple? Can we find a clip of that again?
Well, I think we might be able to find it at some point. There's one thing that I want to make sure we touch on before we end this live stream, because that's pretty relevant about what happened. So I'm not sure if you saw it, but Brendan Miller, during his cross-examination, almost he ran out of time. So I know everyone received a bunch of documents by the government of Canada, by the Department of Justice, an enormous amount of documents. And I think it was pretty hard for all the parties to go through all the documents. And we saw, Brendan Miller, who was interrupted multiple times by the Government of Canada Council. As I said, it almost seemed he ran out of time. So can you walk us through what went on during Brendan Miller's cross-examination, why it seemed to be a little bit different than other times?
So last night, Brendan brought a notice to the commission just saying that the Department of Justice in the last week or so put on the database over 1,000 documents, and some of the documents are 1,000 pages a document. So we're talking about tens of thousands of pages of documents. So he made that known to the commissioner, because I don't think he actually knows that the commission lawyers are doing a really good job of keeping all of the procedural stuff away from the commissioner until it's something of note. And he said that, look, there's lots of really important documents coming out. We haven't had time to look at it. And so today, when he was doing his cross-examination, he was asking for more time because these are relevant documents, relevant to these witnesses that were just dumped on all the parties in the last 2-3 days. And even with that, he did get a bit of leeway with time, but the commissioner was really keeping a tight timeline on him as well.
Yeah, that's fascinating. William, I'm so glad you raised that. There's two ways to handle a demand for transparency and disclosure. One is to stonewall and say, we're giving you nothing. That's usually what the government does. We've had some access to information requests that they've delayed for 7 years. The other approach is, you want a needle in a haystack? Here's 100,000 pages. You've got 48 hours. Good luck finding it. Ha ha, suckers. Sucks to be you. Both are atrocious. Both are tactics of the Liberals, dumping 100,000 pages to obscure the damning documents and doing it now. They knew this Commission of Inquiry was coming since February. It's embedded in the Emergencies Act. They knew. They just discovered these files 3 days ago? They're wicked liars. And if the documents you referred to, William, come from the RCMP, it shows the corruption in that organization, which I said is now par for the course. Brenda Lucki is a disgrace. I don't know if we can go to it. Hey, Olivia and Efron, can you go to the story from Blacklocks, how the RCMP's trust is being frittered away under Brenda Lucki? The RCMP, such a symbol of Canada, a beloved symbol. There even was a hit TV show, I think it was called Due North. It was about a Mountie who was out of place and out of sorts, and it's just such a beloved symbol of Canada, the trusty Dudley Do-Right Mountie. Look at this story in Blacklocks Reporter, one of the few independent media left in this country. Approval rating falls to 51%. The RCMP only has half of its reputation left. When you put a crooked, and I'm using the word crooked on purpose, we know for a fact that RCMP officers said we have enough to charge Justin Trudeau for undue influence from the Aga Khan. And Brenda Lucki said, no, we're just not going to. There you have it. She's frittering away the respect of this key institution. Hey, I hear in my ear that we have the clip of the lady in purple, the mystery woman. Here, let's take a look at that.
That you concluded that it was useful and needed after the fact, but on February 13th, your advice to the government was that you had the existing authorities to proceed to end the blockades.
There was the draft of we knew what some of the authorities were going to be. Of course, we were asked if those were such authorities, would they be useful to law enforcement? I said that they would be useful, but I also cautioned that there are other authorities because if I don't give the full picture, then they can't make a proper decision.
And just to put a finer point on it, and people in the public who question your ability as a commissioner, can you just clarify today how you view your conduct, your leadership at
A reference,
the RCMP,
this is her.
and whether you are staying on?
I'm absolutely staying on as commissioner of the RCMP.
And how would you
Yes, go ahead.
describe your leadership of the RCMP?
All right. Yeah. Well,
Is it
that was
earlier-
that was part of her question, but we also had another longer part before. It's going to come out in the video in the next few days. We're going to see exactly what she had to say. But that's one of the questions. You know, your credibility has taken a hit by testifying here at the inquiry. Would you stay on as commissioner in the future? And she said, absolutely, I would stay on as commissioner.
You know what? She would stay on. That's a decision about her will. But when she says she will stay on, that's a bit presumptuous. It either says that she is the decider or that she already has an understanding with Justin Trudeau. If she protects him, he'll protect her. That's my analogy with Janet Reno, the butcher of Waco, and Eric Holder. There was no errand too dirty for Eric Holder to do for Barack Obama. Conservatives don't act that way. Conservatives have some sort of a deep respect for attorneys general and justice ministers. They treat the rule of law almost like a sacred thing, whereas those on the radical left see it as merely a tool to be used. And Brenda Lucki is a disgrace to the uniform. That's not my opinion alone, as I showed you in that Blacklock story. Under her watch, Canadians have turned against the RCMP. What a shame. More than a century to build up that reputation, and it's frittered away. Well, let's see. My clock says it's 7:56. Do you guys normally run an hour, or do you go a little longer? What's your style for these live streams?
Well, it's usually about an hour. Depends how much our guests have to say. I know as Eva always has some insightful things to say. Same thing for Keith Wilson and pretend lawyer Tom Morazzo, who's a Freedom Convoy intern, who said that he was a lawyer the last time he came on. But yeah, it depends what happened throughout the day. But I think Eva, one of the most important things that I wanted to touch on was what happened with Brendan Miller with the cross-examination and everything. And I think Eva explained it very well. No, Eva, if there's anything else that came out of today's testimony that you'd like to touch on?
Thanks for putting me on the spot. I did have three things, and I know we went through two. Well, one thing we could just let the audience know is that one thing, again, it was just interesting to see how our dear friend Brenda would throw out certain things, and I'm just going to put it out there. An email was shown with a timestamp, and she said, "That's odd. Normally I go to bed by 10 o'clock.
That's right.
So there was an issue with the time zone on the timestamp there. But, you know, we're talking about a national security crisis, which they in turn called a national security event. They just changed the wording and to make it, I don't know, more palatable. But, you know, if we're talking about this kind of issue in our nation's capital where the Emergencies Act is being invoked, the top RCMP commissioner is still going to bed at 10 o'clock. I think we've got some issues.
Yeah, I mean, she needs her beauty sleep, and I'm sure she gets up early. But if you're in the middle of the worst policing danger, like the CSIS test that we're talking about. We're talking about this. What do we mean by the CSIS is the spy agency, but it's in the act that the standard for emergency is outlined. If it is a danger to Canadians or a danger to the sovereignty of the country that cannot be dealt with another law, only and only if that, then you can bring in martial law. So it is literally the worst crisis Canada has faced in 50 years. And she's
Correct.
going to bed by 10 because she needs her beauty sleep.
Correct. The fact that she was so comfortable saying, well, I don't know how that makes sense. I go to bed by 10 p.m. And it was just strange to hear something like that. And that goes to, her evidence of, well, I don't remember this or I don't remember that. Even on the pivotal days, February 13th, February 14th, what was your discussion with this group? What was your discussion to the cabinet? I don't really remember.
Yeah, I had other things going on. Game of Thrones had a new series out. I was watching that, and I was just finishing up some Sudoku, and I just caught up on my Netflix.
Go to bed by 10?
Yeah, and I like to go to bed by 10 because I really, I have such a stressful job. Could you imagine that? Well, Eva, it's great to see you again. Thanks very much, and thanks for your excellent advocacy on behalf of the trucker convoy. I'm so pleased with how the Justice Center has done. You guys have 7 lawyers, I think, and you really are making the commission your project. Brendan especially is doing such a great job up there. I think he is the MVP. He's the player of the game.
Yeah, well, can I just say one thing? He's the one asking questions about the Emergencies Act. It seems like the other players are trying to cover their bum for what happened, cover their departments. And he is the one asking questions about the security threats. He's the one asking about the Emergencies Act. But it's my pleasure. Love to be on the show. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's great to see you again. And really, I think that he is the strongest lawyer, the one most dedicated to the mandate of the Emergencies Act, and I think that if he were not there, this would be a very different commission. I'm so glad the JCCF received standing.